back to my channel. Now in the next few tutorials you may notice a slight difference. Now in this period of uncertainty I don't have access to my normal recording or baking equipment because I'm also changing location, but don't worry, I've come up with a few back to basic recipes which involves no fancy equipment or ingredients. So I hope you enjoy these recipes, I hope you try them out, and most importantly, stay safe. So a pavlova or meringue was one of the most highly requested videos from you guys, and the good news is that it's pretty easy to make. Now I have found myself a hand whisk replacement. It's not a real hand whisk, but it does have a whisk attachment and is electric. So unfortunately when it comes to meringue, it really needs mixing a lot. So you can try it by hand, but I highly recommend you getting some sort of machine to help you with the whisking. So this is a French meringue, which means there are equal measures of egg white to sugar. So you can do it with whatever quantity you want. So we're basically going to be gradually adding the sugar to the egg whites as it mixes. So I'm going to start off by whisking the egg whites until they're foaming, and then go in with my first bit of sugar. So just a little sprinkling at first, and what I quickly realised is that the electric whisk had thrown most of the sugar out the bowl. So make sure you have a deep-sided bowl to do this in if you are doing it with a hand whisk. I'm going to mix that in until the egg whites get nice and light, and then go in with a little bit more sugar. And you basically want to continue adding the sugar in bit by bit and whisking the egg whites until stiff peaks are formed. So even though I'm using an electric whisk here, it still took quite a while and a lot of arm strength to get them to stiff peaks. And as it becomes thicker, you can see the trails of the whisk being left within the meringue. So this is a sign of it getting thicker. And stiff peaks are when the meringue doesn't move when you lift up the whisk. So you can see when the meringue is ready, it really holds itself. Once the meringue is stiff, you can transfer it onto a tray lined with some baking paper. So a good trick of sticking the paper down is to actually get a little bit of meringue and stick it under the paper. Because the meringue is so light, if you're using a fan oven, it might blow the paper around, so I really recommend doing this. And you can shape it however you want. It's not really the right consistency to pipe with because it's not as thick as Swiss meringue is, for example, but you can spoon it into small meringues or spread it out really thinly if you want to do a meringue roulade, but I'm shaping it circular with a slight dip in the middle. I'm just going to spoon the meringue onto the center of the tray and keep a circular shape. And then I'm going to use my palette knife to spread it out onto the tray and create a sort of dip in the middle because this is where I'm going to fill the cream and fruit once it's cooked. I always relate pavlovas to a more rustic looking dessert. If you did want something crisp and clean, then I'd recommend using a Swiss meringue because you get a cleaner shape, especially when you're piping it. Whereas I quite like the rustic look for this. So I've created the dip in the center and now it's time to cook in the oven. So the oven has been preheating at 100 degrees Celsius, so really low. And you want to keep it in there for at least 2 hours. We're going to try and dry the meringue out as much as possible. There are also lots of myths with meringue making. Some people cook it with the door slightly open, but I don't actually think you need to do that. It just needs to be on a low temperature. But what I would do is once the 2 hours are up, I turn the oven off and leave the meringue in there until it's completely cool. Sometimes I even bake it the day before and leave it in there overnight, and that also helps to dry it out. So once it's cooked, it's nice and crisp on the outside and soft on the inside. Cracking is likely to occur, so don't worry too much if this happens. Once again, I think it actually adds to the texture of the dessert. So I'm going to decorate the pavlova traditionally with fruit and cream. I actually have limited access to the fruit, so I'm going to keep it on a tropical theme, but I did want to do something slightly different. So I'm actually going to dry out some pineapple slices. So I've actually seen this before, and the dried pineapple almost look like flowers, and I think it's a really nice addition for a dessert. So I'm going to remove the skin of the pineapple, and then using a mandolin, I'm going to cut very thin slices. So you can do this by hand, but it is a lot easier using a mandolin. And for anyone wondering, that is a mandolin glove to protect my hand. So I've got these foil cupcake containers, and I want to shape the pineapple slightly curved to create this sort of floral look. So I'm going to sit each slice in one of these cups, and hopefully they're going to dry into the same shape. Now I'm aware this pineapple is quite small, so it may not work, but I'm gonna give it a go anyway. And I'm going to bake these at 100-120 degrees for about an hour until they're dry. So to fill the pavlova, I'm just going to make a quick chantilly cream. So I've got some double cream here. You can use whipping, it is slightly lighter. And I'm going to add a little bit of icing sugar and some vanilla just to add some sweetness and flavour. And then I'm going to whisk this by hand. I always recommend whisking cream by hand because it's very easy to over whisk. And you want to whisk it until it just holds its shape. Any longer, you're at risk of curdling it. And now it's time to decorate the pavlova. Now, when I transferred the pavlova onto a dish, some more cracking occurred, which is a little unfortunate, but I actually think it adds to the texture. So all I'm going to do is spread some cream into that dip that I created, and I want a nice layer of cream in there. Cream and meringue is such a classic combination, creamy and light. It's just a perfect dessert. And here I have prepared some more tropical fruit. So I've got some Sharon fruit here, which I'm going to place around the cream. And then some kiwi. And then I've got my dried pineapple. So some kind of worked and some didn't hold their shape as well, but I still got dried pineapple slices, and you can see it really adds to the texture of the decoration and brings another shade of yellow. For a pop of colour, I've got some fresh pomegranate seeds here, which I'm going to sprinkle all over the top, and then finish off with some mint sprigs. Now you can obviously use whatever fruit you like. It's more traditional to use berries such as strawberries or blueberries and raspberries, but I actually love the pop of colour that this tropical mix of fruit gives. And there you go, that is how you make a pavlova. So really easy, it just takes some time obviously because the meringue needs quite a while to cook. If you are serving it for dinner, I would recommend adding the cream as last minute as possible, just because it does make the meringue a little bit soggy. When you're using berries, the berry juices also tend to leak into the cream, so just try and do it as last minute as possible. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Any more recommendations, please write in the comments below. And in the meantime, I hope you're keeping safe and see you soon.